a typical city or town, on a typical residential street, we find a typical home occupied by a typical American family. Like millions of his fellow Americans, John Q. Public earns enough money to keep up the payments on a new car. He takes great pride in owning a fine, new, long-term mortgaged home that was built to last a lifetime. Mrs. John Q. Public no longer finds housework fatiguing drudgery, thanks to a host of labor-saving devices, including her husband. Mr. John Q., because of a 40-hour week, has the leisure to dream about his favorite sport.
Darling!
St. Louis. They call it Greater St. Louis, spreading from MacArthur Bridge out past the Missouri and the Merrimack. When you've been away, it's good to get back home. It's familiar. You know the buildings, you know the streets. It's your home, your city. But it's a big city with streets you've never walked. With houses you've never entered.
$10 a share for 100 shares.
People you've never seen. This little girl is just as much a part of your city as the neighbor's girl you wave to on your way to work every morning. Of course, if you saw her as often as you see your neighbor's girl, if you knew she had pneumonia, you'd want to help her get the medical care she needs. But with only one pair of eyes,
when stockholders invest in a business, they hope to receive dividends to help pay for necessities of life. Within a few short years, an increasing demand for the company's product poses a friend. How can he fill all the orders? He will have to build more plants and buy more tools to increase production of oil drums. It will take about $20 million to do the job. One way to get this additional capital is to sell more stock to many more people.
We as humans have always wondered if we could create the perfect world, free of violence, greed, and sadness. The question is, can this so-called perfect world exist in society?
We know you want to support the United Fund because you've given so generously in the past. With such a big city with so many needs, this one gift to support 122 agencies is the most effective and the most sensible way of giving your neighbors the help you'd want to give them, if you only knew, and if you knew how. With 122 eyes to see your city's needs and to put the first ones first, and with 122 special skills to take care of these needs, you help the most when you give your most to the United Fund.
You help the most when you give your most to the United Fund. But for many, the question remains, how much? Ultimately, of course, you're the only one who can answer that. But when you're thinking of your pledge for the year, won't you give at least 1 hour's pay each month? Out of each month's income, 1 hour's pay is little enough to support all the services that 122 agencies perform in your name. Give 1 hour's pay each month this year. because you help the most when you give your most to the United Fund.